We're in Red Rock Canyon today at the White Rock Mountain Trailhead. There's White Rock Mountain. Then over to Bridge Mountain, Rainbow Mountain, Mount Wilson. Looking down Red Rock Canyon. Over to Blue Diamond Mountain. And right under the sunrise, the Calico Hills, Turtlehead Peak, and our goal today is see if we can, how far we can get toward the top of that saddle ahead. You see that saddle between the two high points? There it is. A lot of cliff action in there. I want to see if I can find a class 3 route to get to the top. Why is getting to the top important? I was standing up there having approached that from Kyle Canyon and approaching, rising to the top of Burnt Peak and then coming down to that saddle. So I was standing on that saddle. What I want to see is if I can find a southern route to get up to that saddle. If I can do that with class 3 climbing, I don't do above class 3. Class 4 and 5 and above involve cliffs and equipment and more advanced rock climbing skills than I have. Class 3 is just scrambling over rocky areas using your hands and your feet. Anyway, if I can get to the top of that saddle from here, I can then do what I call the Kyle Canyon Grand Crossing, where I'll start out at the intersection of Kyle Canyon Road and Harris Springs Road, head up to the top of Burnt Peak, down to that saddle, and then down that saddle, down this cliff area right ahead there, right down that cliff area to where I'm standing now. And we'll call that the Kyle Canyon Grand Crossing. I don't know if that's possible, but hey, we're going to play around on the lower cliffs, at least below that saddle, see how high we can get. We're going to take the White Rock Mountain Trail over to the Keystone Thrust Trail. Take the Keystone Thrust Trail until it begins to rise above a canyon area at the base of that saddle, and then we'll take that canyon wash to the base of the saddle and then on up that cliff. So let's see how this goes today. Here we go. By the way, there is a lower and an upper parking area at White Rock Mountain. There's White Rock Mountain. Well, actually, get around this tree here. There it is. And the restrooms at the upper area, if you don't have a 4-wheel drive or your car can't handle this type of road between, then you got to walk up here to get to the restroom. But anyway, yes, there is a trail, 5-mile trail, really beautiful, that circles White Rock Mountain. I have an adventure on Las Vegas area trails where I circled White Rock Mountain a couple of years ago, a rainy day. I'll do that again to create a better view of the area, but actually I got some really good video on that day. That's on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. Anyway, here's the upper area, and this is where the trails really begin, either heading around White Rock Mountain, or you could take the Keystone Thrust Trail and head up toward that saddle. that we looked at a moment ago. You can see it right in the center between those two high points. Okay, a quick review. If you want to head around White Rock Mountain in a clockwise direction, take this trail. And there's White Rock Mountain. On the other hand, if you want to head up toward the Keystone Thrust or take the White Rock Mountain Trail in a counterclockwise direction, that is your trailhead. That's the way we're going to go. We're going to hit the Keystone Thrust Trail up to that saddle. Okay, as you can see, we're just a little beyond that upper parking area. We just entered the White Rock Mountain trail that goes counterclockwise around the mountain. And what I want to show you here is you see a wash below us. We're descending into that wash. Now, if you want to hit that saddle up there, you can actually take this wash all the way up to the saddle, except it's a little rugged down in the lower portion of the wash. And as you can see, there's a little more of this as you are ascending the wash. Number of boulders. Let's see if we can climb over these guys. There we go. Okay, so anyway, yeah, instead of staying in the wash at this lower portion, I'm continuing around the White Rock Mountain counterclockwise trail until the Keystone Thrust Trail splits off to the right. That Keystone Thrust Trail will take us above this meandering wash, maybe be a little straighter and more direct up toward that saddle. And what we'll do is we'll descend back into the wash before that trail begins to dramatically rise. And the wash will be better up there. Plus, we will have missed a whole lot of rocks and boulders. So it's just a more streamlined approach. So continue on the White Rock Mountain Trail and watch for the Keystone Thrust split off to the right. Okay, here's another demarcation point. You see the canyon below. That's the canyon we are not taking at this lower portion. What we're going to do here is we're going to head up to the right, take the Keystone Thrust Trail. If you continued straight at this point, you would be on the White Rock Mountain Trail, taking it counterclockwise. So we're spinning off to the right, Keystone Thrust Trail. Here we go. This Keystone Thrust Trail has the look of an old road. You can see the double tire tracks here. And it's heading down into a wash and then on up the other side. And there is our saddle straight ahead, which is our target. Okay, here is where the Keystone Thrust Trail is going to split off to the right, and you'll see that road continuing up toward the left. And we want to take the road. At some point, we'll do the Keystone Thrust. There's a lot of places to explore in this area. You can see the Calico Hills below, Trailhead Peak, and lots of places, high points to climb, get a good perspective. And we went down below this red rock area last time and then came back up when we realized that no, that is not heading toward the saddle, which is our goal. And there you can see the Keystone Thrust Trail continuing. Instead, what we're going to do, as I mentioned, is we're going to take this little road upward, and you can see it's heading toward the saddle. Last time we spun off a little bit to the right. We stayed on the ridge above the canyon, or the wash below that's to the left, which is where we want to be actually. So we ended up at the base of those cliffs up there, and it's a bit of a dead end, and it's a pretty radical descent to the wash. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to descend into the wash to the left before this begins to rise sharply. And once in that wash, it's a pretty clear shot up to the base of that saddle, up to the base of the cliff approach to the saddle. So we're going to explore that cliff approach there, see if we can find a way upward. Burnt Peak is to the right, El Bastardo's to the left, saddle is between, and you can see this band of rock, this cliff band. Doesn't look like much from this perspective. However, when you're standing at the base of that, you're looking at a maybe a 30-foot cliff. We want to see if there's a way over that cliff, and if there is a way over that cliff band, it's going to be to the left and in an area that we can't see from this point. That's what we're going to explore today. Okay, we've descended this far up, and the question is where to cross over to the wash. You'll see a mini wash directly below, but then there's a ridge above that. The wash on the other side is the wash we want, and I believe this is a good low point. So I'm going to cross over. I'm going to get up on that ridge in the foreground and look for a way down to the wash below, which is the wash we need to be on. And I think by the time I descend back into that wash, and that's the same wash we saw at the very beginning of the White Rock Trailhead, I'm going to descend into that wash and then continue on up toward the saddle. And we'll just see what those cliffs look like at the saddle area, you know, below that saddle. Okay, so here we go down into this mini wash, and then up to the ridge on the other side, and then down to the wash we're looking to take all the way up to the base of that saddle. And by the way, yes, there is a high point here. This first rocky high point is actually where I am leaving this little road. There you can see a high point below. That's where we split off onto this little road, and the Keystone Thrust Trail continued to the right. Anyway, there's White Rock Mountain below us, and here is our route down and then up to the ridge. Okay, we just crossed over that little mini wash. We're on the ridge above, and now we're looking for the best route to descend into the main wash that will lead us up to that saddle up ahead. So this actually looks like it could be good, but these washes sometimes can have pretty radical edges that, you know, it may not look like a lot, but 10, 15 feet can be a showstopper. But this is actually not looking too bad. And I believe this is the wash that we want to be in. It could be one more over that next ridge, but I'm going to try this wash down here, and we'll see if this is the one that's going to take us all the way up to the base of the saddle. Here we go. Okay, I do not recognize this as the one I descended last time, so I'm going to go up this ridge, and I'm looking for a wider wash area than this little wash here. So let's go up this ridge and see if the main wash we're looking for is going to be on the other side of this ridge. So 2 mini washes we cross. Okay, after crossing those 2 mini washes, yes, I can verify this is the wash we are now descending into. That is the wash we want. And there you can see it below us. Yeah, a lot wider and a more direct approach up to the saddle ahead. Hindsight says that what I should have done is continued on the White Rock Trail rather than take the Keystone Trail. And the White Rock Trail crosses this wash above those boulders in the lower wash near the trailhead. And had I done that when the White Rock Wash Trail crossed this wash again, this is indeed the main wash that we want. This will lead us all the way up to the base of the saddle. And I could have actually taken this wash from the second place the White Rock Mountain Trail crossed this wash. And that would have saved me a lot of time and wandering around. But yeah, not too much time. And we still are where we want to be. So let's go ahead and descend down into this wash and then continue up the wash. Okay, we're back in the main wash. And again, this is the wash that you cross right at the beginning, near the beginning of the White Rock Mountain Trail counterclockwise. You cross this wash, and then my suggestion is continue on the White Rock Mountain Trail past the Keystone Trail split off, and then the next time it crosses this main wash, start taking the wash upward, and we'll do that streamlined approach on the return trip. For now, at least we're in the wash. Let's continue on up to the base of the cliffs. There are just a few places in this wash that you've got just a little bit of rock scrambling. This one is like not even a scramble. Just take the stairs. But there are 2 places in this wash where you reach a barrier that you need to ascend out of the wash and then descend back into the wash to circumvent that barrier. I think when I redescended into this wash at the higher point that I had bypassed those 2 areas, which is nice. It saves me a little time. I think it comes out about the same in the wash. Okay, continuing on. Just to get an idea of how nice this wash is as you get higher up in the wash, at least this portion, we're looking down toward the Rainbow Mountains, and you can see how wide the wash is. And then continuing on up, I think that by taking the Keystone Thrust trail, I bypassed a couple barriers, but those barriers weren't so great. So we'll take a more streamlined approach on the way down. But for now, let's continue up this nice wash and see how far we can get toward the base of the cliffs and the base of that saddle before things start getting a little gnarly. Okay, wrong. As I mentioned, there are two barriers. The first barrier is right through this narrow channel on the left, and the bypass is to the right. So yeah, I could have just stayed in this wash from below, and I still would have had these two barriers. There's nothing to speak of in the wash below here between where we are and the White Rock Mountain Trailhead. So, yep, got two barriers. The first one you can circumvent to the right. The second one, I seem to remember, you circumvent to the left. So here we go. Correction, I just passed through that narrow channel, and if this is the only barrier, I think I can pretty easily ascend this. And by the way, here is that narrow channel. So if I can't ascend it, then I can always ascend right over here. So yeah, go through the channel and just head right up over this little dry waterfall. Pretty shallow, lots of rocks to find some hold on. Yeah, that wasn't too bad. Little class 3.5 rise of about 6-7 feet at the top of this narrow channel, and there's some good footholds there. So yeah, no problem. Continuing on up, we're going to hit a higher barrier up ahead, and that's what we're going to circumvent to the left. So onward. Okay, here's the second barrier. A little more vertical, not as imposing as it looked when I was descending from the other side. And actually, there are some ways above and around to the right and to the left. So yeah, let's just see. Let's get a little closer and see if there is a way around this barrier. This is actually not too horrible. And there's a way right above. So let's try this right hand split here and see if once we get above the barrier, it's an easy descent back into the wash. And again, this is the last barrier, at least in the mid portion of this wash. All bets are off once we get to the base of the cliffs at the saddle. Okay, onward. Again, very easy to circumvent this second barrier. It looked like such an imposing barrier from above when I was descending last time. I hadn't been in this wash before. And as you can see, yeah, it's fairly vertical here. But yeah, to the as you're ascending, just take that little jog to the right, and then it descends right back into the wash. One of the easier barriers to circumvent. So those are the two barriers in the mid wash. And now we're heading on upward to the upper wash. We're not quite there yet when we hit the cliffs. we're at the upper wash, and there you can see the saddle above us. So let's continue on. By the way, it is the 16th of October. Weather is just perfect. It's going to get a little warm on the way back. Now let's take a look at potential approaches. You can see there's a band, there's a cliff band that descends about midway up this cliff, and you can see it descending kind of a crescent shape, upside down crescent. Anyway, yeah, that band is pretty imposing. However, over on this side, I'm going to zoom in. The voice is going to mute for some reason. It gets softer when you zoom in. But what I'm going to do is zoom in to a place where I think there might be a way over that cliff band. We don't know for sure until we get up there. But you'll see a kind of a pathway above at the right base of the larger cliff. By the way, this is El Bastardo. And up on this side of the saddle is Burnt Peak, and then we get over to El Padre Mountain, and then around and beyond is La Madre Mountain. So gives you an idea of where we are from below. And you can see on Las Vegas area trails where if you look at the La Madre Mountain North pages and videos, you can see what things look like from Kyle Canyon. But if we can reach the saddle up there where we stood, we arrived there from Kyle Canyon earlier. If we can reach that saddle, then we can get all the way down Kyle Canyon in a future trip, and we can do what I'll call the Kyle Canyon Grand Crossing. But for now, let's zoom in on this area that looks like it could be a way up to that saddle. If there is a way, it's going to be right in this area. See those rocks, how they angle a little bit, and maybe you can wind around these rocks. And then once you get to the this pathway above, you've got it made. The big challenge is winding around those rocks below the pathway. So let's just continue to explore and see how far we get. And by the way, to this point, we have ascended about 1,000 feet. Let's look back down toward White Rock Mountain. There's El Bastardo. We're looking around. There you see the Rainbow Mountains. And just a quick review here. I'm going to zoom in on, there's Bridge Mountain. Rainbow Mountain, Mount Wilson. And then looking down the wash to Red Rock Canyon. We're in the La Madre Mountains wilderness at this point. We've crossed the demarcation line, although these lines are only imaginary. There are no lines in nature. Okay, so onward, upward. And by the way, last time I was on this ridge above, and I actually ascended. I'll show you the point I reached. I'll need to go a little further up, but I was up on those rocks and then beyond. in the ridge above, and I just got a good overlook. So if you look at the other video for the southern half of the La Madre Mountains Grand Crossing, or Kyle Canyon Grand Crossing, you'll see where I stood above and to the right last time. Anyway, this time we're heading up the wash. Here we go. Okay, here's a cairn in the middle of nowhere. And by the way, if you take this route, you will probably not see another soul the whole day. So just be prepared to either bring a buddy with you or be alone for this entire trip. And there's that ridge above. And I ascended the ridge up to near the base of that cliff. And as you can see, looking at the cliff, yeah, there's no way over. All I did is I stood up at the base of that cliff, right up there. And I looked down and around, looking for potential routes up above this cliff band, and actually the routes on the left side of the saddle look the most promising, so we're heading in that direction. Okay, as we close in on this saddle and the cliffs, and you can see the cliff band there, let's look for weaknesses in the cliff band. And I'm seeing a potential weakness right in this area. And it's right below that little trail, or looks like a trail up there. So that's one potential weakness. And then now I'm seeing another potential weakness right up in this area. So between those two, there may be a way through that cliff band. So we will check that out. I'm going to try the left side first, but we'll see as we get closer up. We may end up needing to try both sides, and if we cannot get above that cliff band with class 3 climbing, then there is another route that begins at the Willow Creek area of Red Rock Park and ascends the cliffs. You can get to the top of the cliffs, and I've been just to the other side of this huge cliff area. And by the way, that up ahead is El Bastardo. So I've been above this cliff, and I ascended to that point from the Willow Creek picnic area and up through La Madre Springs, the backside of White Rock Mountain, then La Madre Springs. And I could revisit that a little later. Eventually I will, actually. But for now, let's see if there's a way up this saddle. Okay, from this angle, I'm looking up toward El Padre, and maybe, just maybe, one could wind through these rocks ahead and end up on that plateau from which there would be an easy ascent to El Padre's summit. And there is the summit. If you can get to the plateau there on the edge, you've got it made. Let's zoom in. There's the plateau. And there is a bit of a shaky, possibly exposed route. And you can see that route stretching below the plateau, and yeah, it's looking a bit, maybe up through this direction. But yeah, it's looking beyond class 3, at least from this perspective. Yeah, wow, that would be quite the, and then you've got to traverse across the top with a whole lot of exposure up there. So that's not my recommended route. And other possibilities would be right up around through this area. We'll see. We'll get a better look once we get up there. I guess you could potentially head up this area, right up through there, take a left, and maybe that would get you above the cliff band. We don't know. So you see this large rocky area in the center, and either to the right or the left there is a potential approach, but again, we got to get closer to really check those out. So number of potential approaches from this perspective, but you really don't know till you get up there and you're actually up in the rocks. Well, I'm going to take this wash as it continues. It looks like it's angling to the right, which would be toward what I thought might be some openings up there. We don't know. There's that cliff band. It looks pretty imposing. So we shall see. Of course, the other route is up this way, which is also a possibility. But let's try the main wash first and see how far we can ascend up this main wash. It did look like an unbroken cliff band from below, so this could be a mistake, but what's the worst that can happen? We just turn around and head back to this point and on up this direction. Okay, I was just standing down there looking up the main wash and saying, hey, I'm going to take the main wash. Actually, I just keep thinking that cliff band from above, from down below, looked like it was unbroken. So instead, I see another wash up in this direction, which is that left direction. And I'm going to see if it'll wind around this huge rocky area, which is what we need to do, and get above the cliff band. So let's first try this left approach. It's either going to work out or it's going to be much shorter. We'll reach a dead end and need to turn around, and then we've got the larger wash to the right, if that's what needs to happen. Okay, so up we go. Okay, as I thought, we hit a barrier pretty early on. If you're into rock climbing and you've got experience and probably a buddy and maybe some equipment, you could probably get over this area, but who knows what's above. So another potential route is to retrace my way down this wash a little ways, and I thought I saw a potential way around and above this rocky area that would be more class 3 my style. So let's try that, and if worst comes to worst, we'll go back to the main wash. But yeah, for now, we need to get above this dry waterfall. Okay, we descended a little bit, and let's go ahead and just see what things look like up in this direction. And if it stays class 3, we'll check it out. And by the way, here's that side wash that we had ascended. We reached the barrier up above. This is a potential way to circumvent that barrier if it doesn't get too cliffy up there. And this is looking down this little side wash that ends at the main wash, which is another potential route. So let's go ahead up this way and just see what the world looks like up here. Okay, I've continued to ascend the hillside here, and there's the main wash below. And there's the split off wash that I took to the left. And there's that ridge I was on last time. Got up to the base of the cliffs there, looked around. Here's Trailhead Peak, about 200 feet below in elevation. There we're looking at Red Rock Canyon. And straight toward the Calico Hills to the right of Trailhead Peak, and you can see the scenic drive, and then beyond you're looking at Blue Diamond Mountain, and then further off in the distance the Las Vegas Valley is behind Trailhead Peak. So we're gonna wind around here and see if it is possible to just circumvent that barrier that we reached earlier. We don't know if that's possible. If it's not, then the other option is to head back down to the main wash and then follow it as it splits off over in this direction and through these hills and see if there's a route upward. And it does look like, yeah, a few scrambling routes up there, but they also look mighty exposed. So I don't think I want to do those scrambling routes, but maybe the wash will get me closer. We are about, I'd say, maybe 1,500 feet below the elevation of the saddle. And a lot can happen in 1,500 feet. And there is a portion of lower El Bastardo we were looking at from above. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's any class 3 approach that's going to get us up into this area. And besides, we want to get to the saddle, which is up that way and to the right. So let's explore a little more around this cliffy area that I'm on. It's just steep. It's not beyond class 3, but there are some points up here that look like they're gonna get a little steep with loose rock. So we'll see what happens. Well, you guessed it, I'm back in the main wash, and that area up above at the base of the rock up there, the cliff, was just too brushy and steep and loose rocky. So I'm back down in the main wash. We're going to take this main wash as far as we can easily and just see what possibilities are up this way. It was good that I took that little side wash the way I did off to the left, because I suspected that if there was a barrier, it would be early on, which would give me enough time to reroute up this main wash. So let's just test this out. Continuing up the main wash, let's get a look around here. You can see that band, that cliff band up ahead right in the center. And we're looking for a way over that cliff band. Once we get over it, we've made it up to the saddle. And there's the saddle right up ahead. But there could be a lot of barriers in between where we are in that saddle. Another potential way up could be this, but it looks a little dicey once you get near the top. So for now, I'm staying in the wash, and curiously, this is the same wash that began at the trailhead, basically. The White Rock Mountain Trailhead, where we started. And this wash has very few significant barriers. A couple that I needed to skirt. In fact, one that I needed to skirt, really. And otherwise, I've just been continuing to ascend this wash. So far, so good, but it looks like things get a little crazy up further. We'll find out. Well, we're about 6,500 feet now, and the goal is 7,800, maybe 7,600. So we've only got about 1,000 feet. Here's a barrier in the wash. However, it looks like there's a pretty easy way to skirt the barrier up to the left. So we're going to go up there and then descend back into the wash and see how far we can get. I can see the cliff band up ahead, but as we approach that cliff band, if there's any weakness there in the cliff, then, and we get above the cliff band, we have basically made it to the saddle. Well, that wasn't too bad. It was a bit of a tight squeeze around this corner especially, and over that rock, but and a lot of loose rock and a drop off below, but not too bad. There wasn't any really bad exposure, maybe slight exposure, a little more than I like, but now I'm above that barrier and we're continuing up this wash. We're now only about 1,200 feet below the saddle, which is up in that direction and a little to the right of those cliffs. There's a barrier here and I'm running low on time, so I'm going to turn around at this point, but this does not look like a showstopper barrier. Come back to this point and see how far I can get above this barrier. It's possible just to go straight up there. Alternately, one could take this route above, but yeah, it looks like there's exposure and brush up there, so it may be the best just to take this straight. So I'll do that on a return trip, but yeah, only about 1,200 feet below the summit of the saddle. So, but a lot can happen in 1,200 feet. Okay, let's turn around and head back down this wash. There's only one barrier of significance on the way down, and there you see a shot of Trailhead Peak below us. We're about, I'd say maybe 500 feet higher in elevation than Trailhead Peak. Okay, we have descended this wash in less than an hour compared to how long it took us to get up to that high point. So the wash is definitely the direct path downward. And in a bit, we're going to cross a trail that's marked with a stone border. When we hit that trail, and you can see White Rock Mountain, we're closing in on it very quickly. When we hit that trail, the intuitive way to go would be take a right toward White Rock Mountain. However, that would take you around White Rock Mountain, and you don't want to do that. So the way to go is left, and that'll take you back to the trailhead. So we'll watch for that rock border. I took a little detour out of the large wash by accident. Let's get back into the wash. Great thing about it is you can see it very clearly. There we go. Back in the wash. Okay, we'll take a look when we get to that rock border. Okay, here we are approaching that rock bordered trail. And as I said, the intuitive way to go would be take a right and head toward White Rock Mountain. The only problem with that is that it will take you around the backside of the mountain. The way to go, rather, is to take a left here at the trail. And this is going to connect with, well, this is actually the White Rock Mountain Trail now. And it's going to connect with where we met the Keystone Thrust Trail. It's going to continue down very quick to the trailhead, which is right at the base of White Rock Mountain ahead. You can see the left base. And you can see now, looking ahead, how this trail leads right down to the base of White Rock Mountain. And at the base of White Rock Mountain, there on the right, is where the trailhead begins. Now, in the meantime, had we continued straight, which I've done that too, I turned right at the rock bordered trail. I've gone straight. I just haven't done this, which is more logical, actually, taking the left. But had you gone straight, the wash gets a bit evil below that rock bordered trail crossing, which is why this trail stays above the wash and then eventually crosses it. There are boulders, there are channels, and it's all right. I mean, it's not impossible to take that wash all the way down. And you can see it below down there. And maybe you can see some of the boulders. So yeah, you're in those boulders, climbing over stuff, and that's fine. But this is a lot more streamlined to take the trail. And on the way up to that saddle, and we can turn around and see the saddle area up here, right in the center between those two high points. On the way up, if you take this White Rock Trail to that rock border crossing where it crosses the wash, and we turned left just a moment ago. If you then take the wash up from there, that would be the most streamlined approach. This trail, the White Rock Mountain Trail, till it crosses the wash, and then get into the wash and just head all the way up. And your total time on that could be under 2 hours, giving you quite a bit of time to play around on those cliffs and see if you can find a way up. Okay, so heading down to the trailhead now, which I can now see in the distance there. So let's continue down, and yeah, about an hour and a half on the downhill from that highest point. So not too bad at all. Okay, here we are now, crossing that same wash we were in most of today that took us all the way up to the base of the saddle. We were about 900 feet below the summit of that saddle. So anyway, this is that wash. And as I mentioned, between here and that upper crossing, it gets pretty bouldery. So yeah, take the regular White Rock Mountain Trail up to where it crosses this wash again, and then take a right on the wash and just head up the wash all the way to the base of that saddle. And that is the most streamlined approach to the base of the saddle. We haven't figured out yet how to get the last 900 feet to the summit of that saddle. That is going to happen at some point, maybe. I don't know if it's possible, but we'll try this again. And here we are at the upper trailhead. Then we just head down the road to the lower trailhead. It's about a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, and we've made it. And by the way, my timing when I said an hour and a half a little bit ago, that was estimating how long it would take to finally get to the lower trailhead. We're right on time. So yeah, from that uppermost point in the wash where we turned around all the way to the lower trailhead, we're looking at about an hour and a half.